أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم تجد كل نفس ما عملت من خير محضرا وما عملت من سوء تود لو أن بينها وبينه أمدا بعيدا ويحذركم الله نفسه والله رؤوف بالعباد قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم. So ayah number 30 begins, يَوْمَ تَجِدُ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا عَمِلَتْ, which is the day upon which every soul will find all that they have done. مِنْ خَيْرٍ مُحْضَرًا, all that they have done of good to be present. So the obvious translation of this ayah is that on the day of judgment, every human soul will find that the good that they may have done is present before them. As regards to what they have done of evil, وَمَا عَمِلَتْ مِنْ سُوءٍ, so in regards to all that they have done of evil, تَوَدُّ لَوْ أَنَّ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَهُ أَمَدًا بَعِيدًا, they would wish at that point in time that there would have been a distance between them and the evil that they have done, the furthest distance that one could imagine. This is أَمَدًا بَعِيدًا, would be like the furthest distance one could possibly imagine, that you would rather see that the evil you've done should be so far away that it's not seen at all. So it's a little poetic in a description. It's basically the good that you see, it's there, it's present, muhtara. So if you put yourself in if you envision yourself in a situation where something is clear and it's in front of you and you could envision it, and then there's also something else there that is also clear, but you would rather have it what? Out of sight. The contrast between good and evil therefore is put in that way. So the things that you want and you like are always things that you want to have in front of you and you want to see visibly. And the things that are unseeming, right, as they say in English, things that you don't want to see, then always you prefer them to be out of sight. Okay, that's the example here. So on that day, every human soul will be in that condition. The good that they have done, it will be in front of them and it will be there. But since the evil is also present, and the evil that they've done is also there in front of them, and it will be judged by Allah. But everyone would have wished that that evil that they have done would have been removed to them to the extent that it would not be visible. So a type of nadama and regret that every human soul will feel, and will be in a state that they wished that the things that they have done that are unseeming, they should be very far away from them and unseen and hidden. And actually the mercy of Allah is such that there will be certain servants whom by His fadl their evil will actually be covered and they will not be present and they will not be shown to anyone. You understand? Not even themselves. So this is what we call being taken to Jannah without hisab, without any type of reckoning. There are people that are in that state. Okay, there will be people in that state of every generation. Actually, there's Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam once said that there were 70,000, but then clarified that there are 70,000 in every generation of people who would be fortunate enough to go to Jannah without hisab, which means again that they don't have to take account of their deeds. So people like that will not have to see the evil that they have done. They will not have to see the things that they would be embarrassed to see, right? Our mistakes and sins and so forth and so on. So after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ وَاللَّهُ رَؤُوفٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. That Allah, literally yuhadhir, tahdhir means to warn. So Allah warns you about Himself. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed very loving, lenient. There's a lot of ways to translate ra'uf. That He is very loving, lenient, and He is extremely compassionate, if you will, also towards His servants. So anytime this whole statement, you have to understand that it has to be a statement that is born out of love. So if you're a parent and you warn your children, right, you warn your children out of love. But also, even here, it's more so because every statement of warning and what they call wa'id, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does exactly this, وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us about Himself, what does that mean, first of all? I mean, is it a literal meaning? Of course it is. But what does it mean to be warned of His nafs, of His being? Is it him that we are being warned of, or is it his punishment? Which one?
Punishment.
There you go. You understand what I'm trying to say, right? So in other words, he warns you of his punishment. Furthermore, not just punishment, but really what is said here is the uquba or aqiba, the results of your actions. That's why before this statement, everything was about what we have done. Ma'amilat, what every human soul has done. So what is Allah warning you about actually here then? Even though it says nafsahu, Allah warns you about himself, what is it saying? Allah is cautioning you in regards to the results of your actions. Okay? Cautioning you about the ultimate result of your actions, because you will find a day يَوْمَ لَا تَجِدُ يَوْمَ تَجِدُ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا عَمِلَتْ مِنْ خَيْرٍ مُحْضَرًا, and so forth and so on. See, a lot of times people, and even non-Muslims, when they talk to me about reading the Quran, because the Bible is a lot different in its style. Okay, so the Bible also, it's chronological, right? It starts from the story of creation and Adam alayhi salam, then the saga of Bani Israel, and then you get to the New Testament, which is Isa alayhi salam. So even it's chronological. Quran is not chronological. You understand? So the reading for some people is easier. They'll say things like that to me, like, well, you know, when I read the Bible, it's easier reading than it is the Quran, because we can't always tell what the connection is between these particular verses and the chapters. There's no chronological order there, so forth and so on. Even sometimes within the surah, like these few ayat, we're not able to understand or discern the meanings that are connected between this ayah and the other ayah. Okay. But one thing is that's because the Quran requires tadabbur. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, will not these people actually think? And tadabbur means not to think, but to actually take things into consideration and put things together in a meaningful way. Everything has to be actually, it's a process. What's a better word for it here? Would they not deliberate? I think that's sometimes what they use, right? You understand what I'm saying? Tafakkur, tadabbur.
But this is like a man, like the way it's put together. It's not put together like what the first revelation was and then falling down, right? I don't know how they decided on that.
Oh, that's another separate issue. The nadam and the actual compilation of the Quran was something that was done throughout the entire life of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is actually part of the reasons why people don't understand that it is a sunnah, it is another separate sunnah to actually finish the whole Quran in Salat al-Tarawih in Ramadan, for instance. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ used to recite the Quran with Jibreel alayhi salam, from beginning to end during Ramadan, so that people would learn the chronological order of these surah and these chapters. That's why it's also part of the Sunnah. So anyhow, but that's kind of a separate. That's a good question, but that has to do more with the actual ulum al-Quran concerning the compilation of the Quran, how it happened historically, and how the Prophet ﷺ, and then after the Sahaba. Because in essence, the Musaf that we have today, the names of the surah, the chapters, and the chronological, or not but the order of them, that is also inherited by whom? The ijma' of the Sahaba. Starting in the time of Abu Bakr and culminating in the time of Uthman anhu. So it's important to understand how this all happened historically too. They did get this from the Prophet ﷺ, but how? Like I said, one way is that in public. That's why I said Tarawih. Even though he did not pray in Jama'at out of fear of becoming incumbent, but they knew, as Ibn Abbas says in another hadith, I'm kind of diverging, but whatever, that in the time of Ramadan, Jibreel alayhi salam would review the Quran with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and thereafter, those who would learn the Quran from the Prophet as a whole, like Ubay ibn Ka'b, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, okay, he would then recite that same tartib, the exact same the order, right, in front of people in Salat al-Tarawih. Okay, and then Umar al-Anhu then put them all behind him or whoever else could be an imam who knew the Quran, and then that became the practice of Salat al-Tarawih. That had a function besides just praying Salah. And that's what a lot of people miss out on in Ramadan. You understand what I'm saying? That had a function besides that, which is that in public, right, in a general majma and gathering, everyone could hear and listen to the entire Quran, and with the intent that they would all be able to memorize or at least know it well enough to understand themselves the order of it and how it's to be recited and so forth and so on. It's almost like a practical classroom. And salah in night time is the best time. أشد وطئا وأقوى مقيلا, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about salat in the night, meaning tahajjud primarily, but it is the most effective way of memorizing and understanding what you're saying. Does it make sense? You understand? Okay, so like that's why Salat al-Tarawih also is after Isha. Technically, okay, now you got me on a roll. Salat al-Tarawih, the word itself, Tarawih, means breaks. Tarawih is the singular form, and that means simply to take a break. Tarawih is a plural form of that, which means to take several breaks. And the reason why it's called that is because that basically their breaks would be as long as the actual salah. So sometimes they would finish throughout the entire night. So if you made 4 rak'ah, in other words, you would rest for as long as it takes to make those 4 rak'ah, and then you would make another 4 rak'ah. That's how it was done in the time of the companions. And so it was like this was part of the purposes of, or the purpose rather of Salat al-Tarawih was actually to memorize the Quran. And that's also because it's an oral culture as well. Writing the Quran was a priority for them, but that wasn't done by everyone. That was a committee that was appointed by Abu Bakr first, and then also in the time of Uthman. There were certain particular people. Interesting to note, Imam Malik's uncle, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, was one of the people who was commissioned by Uthman to write down the Quran. Okay? So, but that was something that was done by only particular people. Salat al-Tarawih was supposed to be done for the general populace. Because again, the Arabs were what? Ummiyun. What does that mean? For the most part, illiterate. So that in order to keep the Quran and memorize the Quran, it was more effective to do it orally. The writing part was done just simply to record the oral tradition. There's two different things, right? You can rely on the oral tradition, and then the writing is just there to record what's already in the hearts and minds of people. Or you can use the written tradition and then rely on that. And the problem with the written tradition too is, like, especially in those days when it wasn't just the Arabs but even the so-called civilized people of the world at that time, literacy was not in vogue. Okay? So only certain people could write, and only certain people could officiate even what was written. That's why in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, why did he have a ring? What was one of the purposes and functions of his ring? His official, right. They just give it an official seal. That means that when that letter is received by another leader or someone of importance, they know that it is truly from him because it has the official seal.
Signatures.
It's like a signature. It's a verification that that letter was really truly sent. Otherwise, obviously, someone shows up with a letter and says it's from Fulan. How are you going to verify it? And how are you going to verify? So basically, this is the way that the Quran was compiled, and it's a good topic, but it does take more time and a little bit more detail.
So just one more question. So in Surah Qamar, it also says, "Well, yes, the Quran made it easier for."
Yeah, that's
so
correct.
we made it easier to understand, or we made it easier just for memorization? Then?
It goes both ways, but not everyone is going to be able to understand. When we say understand, let's put it this way. There are obvious meanings that should be understood by everyone in the Quran, and as we said before, mutashabihat and other things. There are also things that are not understood by everyone. So the general gist and message of the Quran is easy for people to grasp. It has to be, right? But the more detailed commandments, which have to do with fiqh, the awamir and nawahi, and even some of the more, how should I put it, deeper meanings, okay, that's not going to be understood by everybody. So the dhikr here means preservation, memorizing, and all the things that are connected to memorizing But that doesn't mean everyone will be able to do what it takes with all the auxiliary subjects that are related to the Quran to preserve the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks certain people in the ummah to do that job.
But
Okay?
if it's chronological order, wouldn't it make it more easier? Or, like you said, Bible is...
It makes it easier to read. But that's the difference. That's actually the mu'jiza of the Quran, and that's even in some ways how you can tell the Bible is man-made. Because it's easier to read, but that's because, we actually look at the meanings of every ayah, of every word. And when you do tadabbur, this is why the miracle of the Quran and even the miracles of Islam, I was actually just talking about this in the Aqidah class with some other people, that there's two ways of approaching the issue of Aqidah. Then one is to first look at things like, for instance, from the creation, we deduce there is a creator. And from that point, we deduce things like the Risala and the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's one approach, you understand? So the way you would do it, if you were to talk to someone about Aqidah, you would say, well, let's first look at creation. From creation, we deduce there's a creator. And from that, we deduce also that the creator has sent messengers. And okay? Another approach is to first look at the messenger. And then from there, we understand the veracity and the truthfulness of the messenger, and therefore understand the truthfulness and the veracity of the message. It doesn't really matter which approach you take, you're trying to get to one point, right? But the issue there is that when you have to look at the messenger, in this case Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the idea is to understand his veracity and truthfulness. There's a little bit of tadabbur, same word, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبُّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ, meaning it's something that would require you to take a concerted effort and really think about everything related to this man, his life, his message, and all the subtleties that it involves too, to ask real core questions. If he was a liar, would he done this or that or the other thing? If, at the very least, let's just put it this way, if you would look, and you would also then thereafter have to study his whole life, in some regard, at least briefly. And if you have done that, I don't think any honest person could conclude at least this, or not conclude at least this point, that whether you accept it or not, for sure, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam believed in what he was saying.
So is it okay to say that it follows Prophet's timeline, life events?
The Quran?
Yeah.
It does, but it doesn't. It does in terms of what they call asbab al-nuzul, like the context in which certain ayats were revealed, but not in terms of its order that we have now.
Because sometimes Prophet had to ask companion, this ayah should go.
Yes, yeah, and that was again based on this hadith Ibn Abbas and that was based on the instructions of Jibreel alayhi salam.
Yeah.
And that happened every Ramadan, and that was hence the importance of Ramadan too. By the way, it's the month of the Quran. Shahr Ramadan unzila fihi al-Quran. You understand? That is the month of the Quran, and a lot of people miss out on that. The fasting is very important. Obviously, it's an obligation, but it is just as important in that month to understand its connection with the Quran and how even historically that became part and parcel of of the the actual order and everything else related to the Quran and its memorization.
There was divine guidance in the compilation also.
Absolutely. So we accept that. There are some people or Muslim sects that argue about that point, but the Sunni or the Orthodox tradition definitely does accept that it was divine. It wasn't something that was just made up by people later on.
And the preservation of the Quran is not the responsibility of man. Allah says in the Quran, this is something that He does.
Right, but
And it's so interesting how, for example, when Allah talks in the Quran about a contract,
Yeah.
He tells, write it down.
Yeah.
But a commandment would never came to write the Quran down. That was never a commandment, correct?
Yeah.
Right, the preservation is on a different level.
People were actually stopped to write down one point, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Quran, and that goes back to all the things that I said earlier about oral traditions and written traditions. There's a reason for all of that. Okay. Whereas, like, the idea of writing down your contracts is different, much different. Okay. Than memorizing and compiling the Quran. Plus, by the way, the order there that's in Surah Al-Baqarah for writing down these contracts is not It's not ala al-wujub, it's not wajib. Not every, that's why it's important to know, again, the language and the details. Not every order is an obligation. Some orders are actually to prove that it's just simply permissible. If that's the case, then every lady in here will beat you up. Why? Because the Quran also orders فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. That it's actually a command form in Arabic. Marry whomever you love of women, 2, 3, or 4, right? So if you take that literal, what does it mean? All of us have to practice bigamy. Now every woman in the room will start beating you up if you say that, right? Is that the case? Is it an obligation? Because it's actually a command form in Arabic. If the Arabic is actually فَانْكِحُوا is an actual command form, I've seen people take that ayah even to the furthest extreme, because the actual word in Arabic means intimate relationship. So they were trying to prove this in Arab by on Arab television, that this means you can have girlfriends and boyfriends and relations outside of marriage, because the Quran is telling you to do it. You understand? So whatever, this is the importance of understanding every command is an obligation. So it's permissibility. Right? And then given in the context of if you're doing a contract with someone you don't know, right, and you don't have any other connection with them other than this business deal or whatever contract you want to do, then it's wise to do what? Right. Write it down as a protection for yourself and other people to keep your contracts written. But it's not a commandment. In terms of al-wujub, it's not something you must do. It's because some contracts, as later on you will see, there's the times when you're not even able to do that. So the only thing you can do is just shake hands and go on your way and hope that everyone will fulfill their end. Anyhow, okay. So where were we? Right. Alhamdulillah. So okay, the idea of ra'uf and connected with this, that when you warn someone out of love. And in the Quran, it's even more affection that is shown to us than that is normal, is that if you notice, after the warning, there is immediately a response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is affectionate, is ra'uf, bil ibad. And the word ibad here means literally these servants. The literal translation of al-ibad is what? These servants. And if you also are paying attention, ibad is not qualified here at all. What do I mean by not being qualified?
It's 11:50, end of the first period. 11:50, end of the first
So we have to go to
period.
the next class.
Because of the teachers meeting, we are having shorter classes.
No, I'm just joking. You don't need period, right? You have to change. You have to go here.
You can do some question and answer.
This is Quran study, next Bible study, right?
Teachers meeting is in classroom.
So, one question like the research we have nowadays, that was finalized in the time of Prophet Islam, right?
The Mus'haf.
The Quran that we see nowadays,
Yeah.
violation, that was finalized in the time of Prophet Islam. Is that true?
Not, I wouldn't say finalized. I would say it was
It was written
Compilation.
like what did they say? The final edition. Not finalized, but it was the final edition, the official and final edition published, if you will, now. Like, this is the final edition. No need to go back and review and revise and make another edition. This is the final. Not finalized. It was already there from the previously, and Abu Bakr had already embarked on making. There were musahif actually existing in the time of Uthman. He finalized one particular version in order to make that the most prominent and recited version, and that was to make it easy for people.
Official version.
Official, there you go, the official edition or version. So that the difference, we don't say it's finalized. That was the official, if you will, final edition, official edition. Also, what I went by all of that, where we got off sidetracked with other subjects, is that the Quran, like the life of the Prophet ﷺ, it's not going to be that easy for you to just read it as you do the Bible. It requires reflection, tadabbur. And when you do that properly, you will always be able actually to see the connections between these ayat, even if the subject matter doesn't seem to be related to each other at all. You will be able to find a connection. So if you follow these things, right? with a little bit of deliberation and thought, you will be able to distinguish the patterns and also how those things are related. Okay? So, inshallah, we'll try to do that here even. So the idea, what I'm trying to say now, to find a connection between these ayat that we recited, is that you first think about the idea of love. Let's put it that way. Because the word al-ra'uf, which is the attribute that's used here for Allah, wallahu ra'ufun bil ibad, right? So let's focus on the name first, or the ism of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, al-ra'uf, which is an adjective. There's a sifa here. The sifa is based on ra'fa, affection, compassion, leniency, so forth and so on. Now, when you think about words like that, ra'fa, ra'uf, affection, compassion, leniency, can one have affection or compassion or be lenient to something or someone that they don't love? That's the key question. No. You understand my point? Just keep that in your mind. You keep that thought that you just had, right, that conclusion you made, keep that there in your mind for a second. Store it up. And then think to yourself, before this was mentioned that Allah is Ra'uf, Allah had warned people, right? وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ النَّفْسَ, Allah warns you very sternly about whom? Himself. Be cautious of the results of your actions. The day you will stand in front of Allah, be cautious. That's how it's related to what? يَوْمَ تَجِدُ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ. Is that connected? Is it related? Of course. In other words, the meaning is very much so connected that, listen, be cautious of Allah, because there will be a day in which you will find all of the results of your actions in front of you. And on that day you would wish, the good is there, but you would wish, as he says here, the bad that you have done will be what? Tawaddu, you would love that between, in other words, you would prefer that between you and the bad you've done, that they would be out of sight. The evil that you've done, the results of it should be out of sight. I don't want to even look at it. I don't want to even think about it, right? That's what out of sight means. Out of sight, out of mind. But if it's in front of you, now you have to you have to really contemplate for a little while. Now what's going to happen?
And even, I don't know if it was in this class or somewhere else, but I heard that even that day, Allah will be looking for ways to forgive you. So then there'll be a group that Allah will say, okay, these people had the shahada in their heart, their belief in the heart.
Yeah.
And then they'll be sent to Jannah. They'll be forgiven. And then there'll be people who just said it, So there will be groups that are just, by that standard, it seems like a lot of people will be forgiven.
Yes, I mean, like the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you knew what I knew of Allah's mercy, then basically Allah, you would never, no disbeliever, no kafir would ever become despondent of Jannah. And at the same time, if you knew what I knew of Allah's punishment, no believer would ever become safe or feel safe from the fire of hell. It's like a mix, you have to have both. But in other words, yes, of course, the mercy of Allah is really inexplicable as a human being to really understand what it means.
I just want to clarify, when you say ilabal, does that mean all humans?
Well, yeah, I was going to get back to that point, because I said that the first thing, just to get ideas, so they're connected in our minds, and so that the meanings of these ayat are all put together in a way that it makes sense to us, that they're all related, and they all have really the same subject matter, even though it may seem to be separated. Okay? So the first thing is to understand what the name of Allah, the ism of al-Ra'uf. Okay, and what does that mean? Then from there to conclude, this is what tadabbur means. Tadabbur is to use the rational faculty to come to conclusions, right? Think about it, not just as a fleeting thought, but really contemplate on it and make some conclusions to it. So that's what we're doing, right? If al-Ra'uf is ra'fa, it's to have affection and leniency and all these other things. Can that quality ever be imagined from a being who does not love the one whom they're being affectionate with? What's your conclusion? No. Right? If Allah is ra'uf bil ibad, if He is very affectionate towards His servants, then that means He must love His servants. Is that a false conclusion? No. So that means Allah must love His servants. So that also means, by default, because one would also, as a human being, said, well then why is He warning us? One may be tempted to think that there is tanaqul, there's some kind of what? Contradiction here. How would you answer that?
So he is warning, so because he loves.
There you go. You're all parents, most of you, right? Not all of us, but okay. Why do you yell at your children? Hopefully it's out of love, right? Right. Hopefully everything goes to your servants, right? But hopefully you are chiding them and warning them tahdir because you love them, because you want what's best for them. It should be that way, at least. But that should be, in other words, again, more conclusions, more tadabbur. So that means the warning of Allah is not based on this kind of like powerful being who just wants to chastise for the sake of chastisement, who just wants to punish for the sake of punishment, and just can't wait for you to mess up, right? Because once you do, that's it, you're done. Is that the idea that you can form here by this language? Just using the language alone. That right after being warned, Allah immediately afterwards follows up with what? Wallahu ra'ufun bil ibad, which even from a linguistic point of view is what they call a nominal sentence, a jumla al-ismiya al-khabariya. So it's basically, without getting into all those details of grammar, logic, and blah blah, it's a statement of truth. Okay? Because that's what a statement, a nominal sentence technically is supposed to be. It's something that you can say true or false to. Because you're just telling someone a fact. The sun has risen. What's that? Right, I'm just giving you a statement of fact. Now either you can say that I was right or I was wrong, I spoke the truth or I lied. Right? So here, this is a statement of fact. What is that statement of fact? What is the fact here that we are establishing? Allah is Ra'uf. See, as even the sentence goes, Allah is Ra'uf. He is lenient. He is affectionate. And to whom? The ibad, to his servants. And as that's where the question came, it is not qualified. It's not just his believing servants. It's not just particular people. In general, Allah is what? Affectionate. So when he warns out of. You get it? What I'm trying to. This is what you call tadabbur. This is what you do when you read the Quran. This is how it all makes sense. Okay? You have to go down in sequence and think about it. That's tadabbur. And then you can come to the conclusions that are proper and intended by the ayat of the Quran. However, right after that, what does Allah say? قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ Say to them, say, meaning whom? Whom is this order directed to? To the Prophet ﷺ. Tell these people, and that's important again, think about it, put it in here. Tell whom? Whom is he speaking to? Who is the khitab, the address is to whom? Is it to all of us? Is it to particular people? And was there asbabul nuzul? Was there a context to this? To where the Prophet ﷺ may be speaking to very particular people, and then there afterwards when we understand the context we can get the general message, we can derive the general message. Do you understand my point? Even just that much. Qul. So you see how the Quran forces you, unlike the Bible, it's just like reading a novel. Now the Quran is forcing you to do what? To take every word, every letter, and actually think about what's going on here. Okay? Because that would be a natural question too. Who is he speaking to? Why is Allah telling him to say something? And to whom? Right. Could be, but we don't know for sure yet, right? So that has to be investigated. So based on that, Al-Hasan al-Basri said in quite a few narrations that this was firstly referring to a group of people in the time of the Prophet who claimed to love Allah.
Who are already worshipping Allah.
Exactly. Who were already, that's the important point, they were already Muslim. They already had Iman, but they made a claim, basically, Inna nuhibbu Rabbana. We love Allah, we love our Creator. Now here's the problem. As the hadith says, Al-Baynatu ala al-Mudda'i. Every claimant has to prove their claim. The burden of proof is on the person who does what? Who makes the claim. That's why we, the language we use, you have to be very careful about things. Even just the statement of Iman itself, even just to say we have accepted Iman, even just to say La ilaha illallah, what does Allah say about that? أحسب الناس أن يقولوا آمنا وهم يتركوا, right? Excuse me. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people assume that they will just be left alone to say we believe and they will not be tested? So in other words, every claim that you make, there now has to be what? Proof to what you claim. Not to take it to that level, but these are good examples, and that's why we take it to that level. If you claim to love someone, if your spouse says, I love you, what would you demand from them? Where's the proof? You love me so much, show me. Because otherwise it's just what? It's just talk. So Allah does the same thing. He says, what, you think you're just going to say, I believe? And then there's going to be no proof behind that statement? That's what this ayah means. Do they assume that they will just be left alone and just say, we believe, and now there's no test, and what is the test for? You see, again, everything is tadabbur. The test is simply to show who is true to the claim and who's not. If they are true to the claim, then these tests will bring out that truthfulness of their statement. If they are false in their claim, when those tests happen, then it will be also clear that what they're saying is just lip service. Okay? So this is the idea. There were people who also claimed in the time of the Prophet what? Divine love. That we love Allah. So then Allah didn't leave them alone. In kuntum tuhibbunallah. That if that's true, if you truly love Allah, then there is a proof of that. And that's why he said, فَجَعَالَ اتباع نبيه محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم علما لحبه. So then Allah Ta'ala made the ittiba', which means what? To follow. So He made following the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the sign of His love. So what would that mean? If you think that you love Allah, if you claim to love Allah, how will you know that that claim is true? It is in any relation to how much you follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If your love is true for Allah, then we can determine that actually, according to this ayah. We can actually determine that by what? How much you follow the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's what the meaning of this ayah is. Okay? So what does it mean to follow the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because the next ayah, again, everything is related. So in the other part, وَأَطِيعُ اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُ الرَّسُولَ, obey Allah and obey His Messenger. Some have mentioned that this ita'ah and obedience to Allah and His Messenger is a lower level. If you cannot follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if your love for Allah is not at that level, your divine love has not engulfed you to the level that you are a complete follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then at the very least obey Allah and obey His Messenger. You see how things are related? We don't even. At the very least, all right. If you can't get to this level where the love of Allah is has engulfed you so much that you follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in full, then very least obey Allah and obey His Messenger. This is like the very least level, the lowest level. It's kind of like the Bedouin who came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, what do you want me to do? Pray 5 times a day. Okay, I won't pray any more than that. Fast on Ramadan. Okay, I will not fast any other time other than Ramadan. Make Hajj once a day. Okay, I'll do that and I won't do anything else. And so the Prophet ﷺ said when the man left it, if he's truthful in what he does, he will go to Jannah. But the man literally put limits on what he was ready to do. Okay, I'll do that. This is what you want me to do, and you see what he's saying? If this is what you're telling me to do, I'll do that, but not more. Okay? Don't ask me anything more than that. Pay your zakah, I'll do that. Not more than that. But what is that compared to a person who engulfs themselves in divine love and will do everything and anything that is expected of them? And that is what is related to the following of the Prophet, because what is really expected of you, who is the one whom Allah loves? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see? So to engulf yourself in divine love, then you have to be the one whom Allah loves. And whom does Allah love? إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, the one who Allah swore by all creation, نُونَ وَالْقَلْمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ, by the pen and all that it writes, meaning in other words, all of the creation that we see and don't see, everything that has been written and destined by Allah to be created, all of that Allah swore to come to one final conclusion. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. That you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the standard of good character. What does that mean? Meaning you are exactly what Allah loves and had intended when He created your father, even Adam alayhi salam. That what He intended by all that for human beings, the pinnacle and crux of that was who? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you want that, you have to immerse yourself in the following of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the litmus test, the mi'yar. You want to know if you really love Allah? You can't just make a claim. Okay, fine, you guys love Allah? Very good. Then follow me. This is your sign. This is how you know that you're not just saying things and you don't mean it, but you actually meant what you said.
What is that ayah that you mentioned?
There was a couple. Oh, Surah Al-Qalam. The very first several ayahs of Surah Al-Qalam. Noon wal qalami wa ma yasturun. And then وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. So ittiba' of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam then becomes, as some say, basically, qawlan, fi'lan, halan, wa i'tiqadan. Word, in deed, in your state, meaning your internal state even, and i'tiqadan, and in your beliefs. Okay. So how does that work? In another hadith of Abu Darda who has explained this, the Prophet ﷺ said 4 things: al-bir, wa-taqwa, wa-tawadu, wa-diddat al-nafs. Bir is righteousness. I'm just transiting this like very surface level. Now we'll go back and we'll explain how all these things are related. Al-bir, righteousness. Taqwa, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Al-tawadu, humility. Wa-diddat al-nafs is literally to put yourself down. The opposite of today. Maybe I'll get into that. You know what the postmodern era that we're currently going into. You know what today's big issue is? What's that, people? Yeah, that's for sure. Oh, I thought you said Kibber. It is. But how? In what way? Today there's an idea going out there, it's called the authentic self. You ever heard of this? The new generation, okay, I go to a lot of coffee shops because I like coffee, and actually Pittsburgh just so happens to have some of the best coffee shops in the whole country, actually. One of them did a reward for being one of the best, Constellation Coffee. They make these places because at one time I floated the idea around to myself that maybe I'll open a coffee shop, right? And I sat down with some people, and obviously in these type of businesses you have to have an idea of the crowd that you're trying to pull in. And most of these coffee shops are trying to pull in the millennials. And what they want is a space, so to speak, this is what they call a space where everyone can just be themselves and not be judged by anyone. You just come and you be your authentic self. Do whatever you like, however you like it. Nobody's going to judge what kind of clothes you're wearing, what kind of music you listen to, on that level, right? What kind of, I can't say in front of the kids, but you get what I'm saying. What kind of partner you wish to have in life. That's the big emphasis, unfortunately. Of course, that's the ultimate issue in all of this, right? What kind of partner you want in life. Nobody's going to judge you. It is your place to be what? Yourself, your authentic self. So what do they mean by authentic self? Whatever and however you feel, that's you. Don't fight it. And don't try to repress it. Be that. But there's more here implied. It's not just that you should express yourself. It is that everyone else now has to accept your authentic self. Okay? Everyone else too now in this space, in terms of in a very school, in this coffee shop. Now they also have to accept, okay, this expression of your authentic self. Now it goes on higher levels in law also and everything else, as we know. It's not just coffee shops, it's also in what? It's in the fine dining. And everyone now has to accept everyone else, no matter what they're doing. This is the authentic self expressing itself, right? Whatever you are, however you feel, you are free to do it and no one else. So what's the problem with that is that we say that the nafs, look at this, how the Prophet says, dillatun nafs. The essence of ubudiyah and servitude to Allah is to do what? Is to lower yourself. That's what dillatun nafs literally means, is to lower the self. It is to recognize that not everything about you is good. There are plenty things about me that just like on the day of judgment, the word nafs is used here, right? Tajidu kullu nafsin, every nafs will find good and they will also find evil. And the evil that they've done, what would they want? Tawaddu. They would rather that evil that they've done, abadan ba'ida, should be out of sight. So it's a sense that human beings have of what? Shame, of regret. The fact that they do have qualities that they themselves don't even want to look at. Okay? So if you do something really bad, what should be the natural feeling that a human being has? You know how the saying goes in English, I can't look at myself in the mirror. You see how this ayah says it the same thing. So what do? They would rather just not even see it. I don't even want to, after what I've done, I don't even want to look at myself in the mirror. The postmodern era is telling people to not only look at yourself in the mirror and say, it's okay, I'm great, I'm good, and everyone else too has to appreciate it and do a wahwa. Like, mashallah, that's wonderful. Right? It's total opposite. Bid'at al-nafs is that. It's the sense that what I've done of wrong, there's a reason to be ashamed. There's a reason to feel like this ayah says that they're abadan ba'ida, like as if I don't even want to look at it. Was that me? Was that what I really did? Did I really say that? You see, qawlan, did I really do that? Fi'lan, you understand? Did I really feel that way? Did I have that much anger and that much hatred inside of me that I felt that way towards other people? You see, so forth and so forth and so forth. It's something that the human soul should actually, what dhillat al-nafs, there should be a sense of lowering the self. There are things about us that we ourselves wouldn't want to see. As the ayah says, we ourselves wouldn't even want to acknowledge. But man, please, get it out of sight. Right? You see what I'm saying? Whereas now, it's all about what? The authentic self, elevating the self to the point that it becomes God, because only God cannot become ashamed. Which is why the Prophet ﷺ said, the first thing that was revealed, meaning the first thing that was revealed to humanity, which indicate this is the first prophet, obviously, Adam alayhi salam. So it's like the first message that was given to humanity. The reason why this is interesting is I will relate this to the Old Testament. Actually mentions this anyway. The first thing that was revealed to humanity was what? إِن لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَافْعَلْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you have no shame, then do whatever you like. That was the first thing that was revealed to humanity. If you have no shame, then do whatever you like. Do what you want. Do what you will. Be your authentic self. If you have no shame, right, then do it. Whatever. The ajib, why I'm mentioning this is because in the Old Testament, their version of the story of Adam alayhi salam is that the reason why Shaitan at least tried to attempt him to eat from the tree was that he said, if you do this, you will become your own gods and you will do what you will. This is actually, by the way, the motto of the Satanic Church in America. If you talk to these guys, some of them are interviewed, they say, we don't even really believe in the occult. Some of us don't even really believe in the existence of Shaitan. I mean, in other words, some of them are saying, we don't even believe in the devil. So why do you do all this? Because the motto of the Satanic Church is, be your own God and do what? You will. Do whatever you like. You have no shame. You feel that you're not the dhillat al-nafs, that I'm the servant of Allah and I lower myself. It is now I'm God. And when you're God, that's the message. I'tiqadan, the being who's truly God, Allah, does he have to be ashamed for what he does? Does he have to be questioned? لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. Allah is not questioned about what he does, they will be questioned. So the essence of God is that what? Cannot be questioned about what he does. He cannot be blamed for what he does. He cannot understand. He has to be accepted, period, for what he is. Now they're taking that and what are they applying it to? The nafs. You can't be questioned about what you do. You can't be blamed for what you do. And you have to be accepted for your authentic self. This is because why? Because we're approaching the era of Dajjal. And what would Dajjal say he is? God. So there you go. You see what you understand the connection? We're following the Prophet is to become the abd of Allah. What does the abd mean? Dhillat al-nafs. You are a servant of God. You literally lowered yourself to be for Allah. Now to explain also some of these meanings, because it's important to understand what they mean. Al-bir is righteousness, but if we just look at things from a linguistic point of view, we can't do that. We also have to understand the one who really knows the realities of these things, how did they define it? So how did Rasulullah define bir? He defined it, and this is related. In other words, you're following the Prophet has four main components: bir, taqwa, tawadu, and dillat al-nafs. And that's related to qawl, fi'l, okay, hal, and i'tiqad, meaning what you say, what you do, your internal state, and the things that you hold on to and you believe in. How is that related to the first four? Let's try it. Al-bir, righteousness. How is that related to yani what you call it? Qawl, or what you say. Bir, as defined by the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith by Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-birru husnul khuluq, that the reality of bir, of righteousness, is that it is good character. What is the reality of righteousness? Husnul khuluq, good character. How is good character defined? Yeah, it's many things. But again, here the Prophet ﷺ and other hadith also too will kind of give us an idea. Where the Prophet ﷺ, as an example, said that akmalul mu'minina imanan, the most perfect of all believers in their iman, meaning the one, if you were to say they're perfect mu'min, they have perfect iman, they have the most, right, pristine and pure iman. He said, ahsanuhum khuluqan, are those who are best in character. But then he went further, which is where we have to think ourselves. This is, by the way, always the disclaimer is when we say these things, one should never look at other people. They should always reflect on their own state. Okay. So then he went further and he said, وَخِيَارُكُمْ خِيَارُهُمْ لِنِسَائِهِمْ, and the best of you are those who are best to their women. So he said, if you want to know then if I have good character, simple. How do you treat your women? And when he meant women here, he's not talking about women's rights. He meant what? Specifically your spouses, which also means that a woman should take it and reverse it. So it's not just one-sided before they just beat up all the men and say, oh, you see, here the Prophet ﷺ said, if you're good, then you'll be good to me. Well, it goes the same way for you too. Alright? It's because the spouse, why the spouse? Because that's the person you live with every day. And that's the person who shares both the good and bad of you that even your own parents wouldn't know. You understand what I'm saying? The intimacy, that's why it's called intimacy in English even, between spouse is unlike any other relationship in the world. So how you treat that person who's right there in front of you and knows the good and bad is how you understand how good your character is. The better you treat them, the better your character, the better your character, the better your, the nur and the light of your iman. If your iman is right, perfect, then your character is perfect. How would you know if your character is perfect? Just look at how you treat your spouse.
Well, wouldn't it also be, because historically, so women have been in a weaker position.
Right.
So okay, how you are to a weaker person than you, and who is also in a very intimate relationship with you, because you deal with them every day.
Right.
So then with that, maybe that's why also he mentioned women, because by that, if you have that mentality,
Yes.
and you're treating somebody who's so close to you,
Right.
who's in a weaker position than you,
Right.
because
That's correct.
then it would apply to everybody.
That's correct. But that's because there's a lot of ladies in the room too, so I can't just leave it unended.
Yeah, right.
It'd be unfair, because then every lady will go home today and say to their husband that, hey, it's your issue, not mine, right?
Why did he not use the word spouse? Why did he specifically?
Because of those, she did, that's true, because of that reason. Because first of all, usually and historically, the woman is always in a weaker position, where, you know, the man has the ability to abuse if he so wishes.
So if a woman just obeys her husband, she's of good character.
Yeah.
That's it.
The good news is that the men are the easier side to please. No, I'm just trying. We're not that hard. Unless the men, now to be fair again, there are men who are absolutely over demanding and expect a little bit too much than is necessary, no doubt. Okay, there are men who are ridiculous in their expectations. Okay, let's be fair. All right, there are men who are pretty ridiculous in their expectations, but a good man, well, let me not say that because I don't want to, like, you know, be
Because
judgmental.
we are defining,
but right, we're
you are
defining.
saying that this
Right.
this is a litmus test
It
for
is.
a man.
Absolutely.
But then you have to understand who is that man.
Right.
What they consider themselves. Oh, I can do this. I have to say in Islam, men has a lot of power.
No doubt.
Women do not have that power.
No doubt.
So to compare the two sides and say, oh, it's the same litmus for the women and the women that and the men, it doesn't sound right in my head.
But put it this way, the basic knowledge you may have of these things of what are the rights of the spouse, right? Both sides. And also, let's just put it this way, if you look at it comparatively speaking, what you just said, the obedience of a woman to a man, they're pretty basic things, right? That they're required, on a very, very basic level, you're required to do this much, okay, for your husband. They're very basic, okay? As far as a man is concerned, because you just brought that up, not every man is different. So what would be, and this is, okay, at a certain level for all of us, because he is the messenger of Allah to all humanity. So what is the standard of good character in general, period? Who? Muhammad. So then we have to look at that model. That's the whole point of this whole discussion. So when and how and where he did things. So his personal life is pretty well documented. Not like nitty-gritty details, and even sometimes there's more details than any one of us would like. We wouldn't want those details out there about our private life. But with the Prophet and there are many details there to tell us about how he used to treat his wives, his children, and all of those people who were under him. Okay. Now look at those things, and that would be the basic litmus test. That would be the mi'yar for all of us. Okay. A good character, how do I know it? It's simple. Look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as an example. How did he treat people? How did he, especially with his wives, how did he speak to them? How did he talk to them? Was he overbearing? Was he this? Was he that? And you'd ask those questions. And so, but that again, it's always important. This is self-reflection, right? So it's not good to point at other people. It's good to point at ourselves and say, okay, comparatively speaking, if I look at the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talk to his wives, or right, do I do the same thing? And if you look, you'll see many things that are there that are just the basic components of a good relationship. You know, he used to listen. I'm just laughing because I have a hard time doing it. You know, he would come home, he would listen to anything they had to say. He wouldn't come home and tell them immediately, you know, what he wanted, but he would listen and he would be attentive no matter what it was that they wanted to say or do, right? You understand what I'm saying? He wasn't, for the most part, actually, according to Anas anhu, that he never chided anybody. He never did what? He never yelled at anyone about did you do this or didn't do that. Even if he was a servant of the Prophet, you have to remember this again. So he's in the house and he sees what's going on. He said, if I didn't do something, also he wouldn't ask, why didn't you do it? So Rasulullah basically, right, he was not a type of person who was overbearing. He was attentive. He listened to people. He would even, Aisha anha was very young, he would play with her. He would go out and race with her and do different things, right? He allowed her to play also, right, to see things like the Abyssinians who were playing. They had a war dance, which they have also to this day. And they were doing it in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And Aisha anha was watching and he allowed her to do it. In fact, he said, is it enough? Is it enough? And then she said, no, I want more. But she said, I really didn't want to watch anymore. I just wanted to be close to you. See what I'm saying?
How old was Aisha when she, is that debated, like how old she was when she was married?
Yeah, that's another topic. That's a whole other topic. Yeah. The answer is that she was young. Okay. Now we can get into the details of exactly how young. That's a different question. Okay. And you know that the crux of it, before even getting the details, is look. You know, it's a problem for us to use our standards of morality to judge a different culture in a different time.
Right.
You know, I mean, you understand what I'm saying? It's not proper. We should just understand the difference between subjective and objective.
My mom was very young when she got married. I mean, she was 16. That's really young. It really got done.
Because those things happen. You know, it's not far-fetched to understand, especially given the context, a young woman marrying, because, you know, the lifestyle and everything else. I mean, look, even not just the women, the men, Osama ibn Zayd, Osama, the son of Zayd, who loved the Prophet ﷺ, commanded an army at the age of 14.
Right.
You understand my point? He was out commanding an army and, you know, leading people into battle. That's a life and death situation. That's no joke. At the age of 14. So people, the maturity level. That's why Islamically we even say that human beings are morally obliged at the age of bulugh, which is puberty. We say that their intellect is formed and complete at that age. So they should be considered grown men and women, actually. Where, you know, in this society, we don't even treat people as adults until they're like 30. Which is also very, it's a big contradiction, because you can send them off to war and die at 18. Right? Like, they can get drafted and sent to a war and die for your country at 18 years old, but they can't think for themselves and make certain decisions because they're still just children. That's the most ridiculous thing you can possibly, right? Like, how would you send a child then to go with a gun and fight in a war? Would that make any sense? Let's give a child a weapon.
But I think there's some scientific evidence that children's brains are not fully formed at 14.
Maybe. I mean, that could be debatable. I mean, what is they're fully developed. In other words, Islamically, they make their own choices. They have enough intellect at that time to know what's right and wrong. And and making your own choices means you should be an adult. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, comparing a 14-year-old in 2019 is very different than a 14-year-old
right.
in 16.
Because even brains develop, and even the idea of like DNA and everything else, all that can be altered. So there is a difference, and that's why I'm saying it can be debatable scientifically. We still can't compare the things and the knowledge that we have today with how people were, and especially in that kind of situation in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, in the life of Hijaz. It's a very demanding and a very, arduous type of life that you live. People have to become mature very quick. Okay, so that was one, but there is a lot of detail to that, even from an academic perspective. But she was, no doubt, young. So here we see just certain examples of how the Prophet ﷺ was. In other words, what would you conclude from these types of hadith? The way that he behaved in his house, listening to his wives, playing with the young girl, like meaning she's a young woman, and he played and he raced with her, and he allowed her to play and do whatever she needed. He didn't yell at people. He didn't scold them for not doing things. What is that? What picture do you get so far? An affectionate person, which is how he's described. Right? That is the Prophet's description, affection. Okay. And that affection, basically, in other words, what would that be? Good character is based on what did Allah Himself say He is? Alright. Good character is based on affection, so that even when you're doing tahdir, yuhadirukum nafsa, even when you have to now tell people something, that you're doing something wrong, and be careful about what you're doing. That should also be based on affection, you understand? Not being mean-hearted and cruel. So in essence, this is just a very simple way, but again, tadabbur, make your conclusions. That's what we're doing, right? The conclusion would be good character, therefore then has to be based on affection. That's what the ayah is saying too, right? Ra'uf or Rahim, affection. The first name of Allah that you hear, Bismillah, Ar-Rahman, right? There you go. So it's all based on affection. Kataba ala nafsihi ar-Rahman. This is the golden rule. Affection is the golden rule. Every once in a while, if you have to be stern, you do what you have to do. But even that sternness, yuhadirukum Allahu nafsa, can never be bereft of what? Same thing, affection. So golden rule for good character, affection. I don't know if you follow the way I'm doing these things. You always look at these terms and put them back and make conclusions. The first word we use for this, al-bir, right? Righteousness. Righteousness is good character, as the Prophet ﷺ. Then we went from good character to your spouse. From your spouse to good character to affection, right? And that's also why when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, the famous hadith, liman abaru. Abaru is the fi'al, it's the verbal form of bir. Same thing. So in other words, who should I be good to? In other words, who should I be the most affectionate to? What did the Prophet ﷺ said? Al-um, your mother. See the point? It's all affection, right? So who should I be good? Bir, the same word, bir, affection. who should I show this goodness to? Meaning, who should I show the most affection to? That's the real meaning of that. In other words, who should I be the most affectionate about, or whatever you want to say, right? What did he say? Your mother, 3 times, then the father. Meaning the father doesn't need it. No, I'm just joking. Be affectionate to your mother. She deserves it, right? As far as the father is concerned, he deserves it too, but he's your dad. Whatever. Bop is bop. Huh? If you called him up every other day and tell him, I love you, I love you, I love you, you might start getting worried, right? Give it up already. The mother will always take it, right? The mother will always take it. You can call her up every other minute and say it, and she'll still be happy with it, right? So, mashallah, who should you be the most affectionate to? Your mom, right? You get the connections now, right? So then taqwa, consciousness, should we stop? Let's see, what time it is. Yeah, okay, that's it. Consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is your fi'l, your actions, okay? What you do and where you do it, how you do it, you should be conscious of. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Tawadu, humility, that is your hal. That is your internal state, is humility. To the extent that you will never feel you're better than somebody else, as the Prophet ﷺ said. That's what he taught. In other words, he has been taught, and he has to teach people the type of humility to the point that nobody will ever feel that they are better than anybody else. That is tawadu. And then dhillat al-nafs, your aqidah. How so? Know who you are. You are created. You are a contingent being who depends on the absolute at every instant. Therefore, you are not God. God is God. La ilaha illallah. So what are you then? You're the abd. That is dhillat al-nafs. Right? You're the abd, not the authentic self. Right? You are the lowered self. You are the servant of God. And that is true ittiba' of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Does all that make sense? That is true ittiba' of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you have that, then you have the love of God in your heart, and more importantly, above and beyond that, your love is whatever, who cares? But what does Allah say as a result of that? Yuhibbukumullah. Allah will love you. You will become beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you have these qualities, and that is the ittiba' of the Prophet. If you can't do that much, then at the very least do this much. Atiyu Allah wa atiyu Rasul. Be like that Bedouin. The very bare minimum, at least be that humble that, okay, I'll do that. Is that what you're telling me to do? I'll do that, but not more. Okay? That's what you want me to do? Okay, I'll do this much. I'll acquiesce, but don't ask me to do more than that. Alright? You see what I'm saying? That's how these ayat are all connected, and that's what really is the crux of it. Of course, as you go on throughout life, all of these things can unfold into other meanings and deeper meanings and other types of conclusions, right? But you have to get the gist of it first. And then when you get the gist of it and you understand how it's connected, then inshallah ta'ala, as time unfolds, more meanings will reveal themselves. And then also, of course, the practice of these things that we need so badly. The following of the Prophet ﷺ is the right. In fact, we'll end at this. ﷺ, basically, there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به, which means that none of you can truly be a believer until the time comes when your own desire, hawa, and I'll have to explain that briefly, what really desire means, hawa. Your own desires are simply following all that I have brought. Now desires, you may make the mistake as me thinking it means shahwa, right? Shahwa is shahwa. Those are things that are particularly like, the type of desires in that sense that we have as humans. We have physical and also we have spiritual desires, by the way. There are two types. You don't just have physical. That's what we think of most of the time because that's the kind of society we live in. There used to be a song, just talk about music in a society based on bodies. You know what that means, right? Purely physical. Everything we think of is always physical, right? So even desires we think only in a physical way, but there are spiritual desires.
Is it the Sufism kind of desire?
Yeah, people talk about those things. So, but understand briefly what there are ruhaniya, shahwatun, ruhaniya, spiritual desires. There are good and bad also, by the way. A good spiritual desire, for instance, is knowledge. So the malaika, right, they achieve, for instance, knowledge, and then it gives them a certain sense of pleasure. Just like anyone who's a little bit academic or a scholar or a little bit of a nerd, does it make you happy to learn? When you learn something, how do you feel? Is it a pleasure or not? It feels good, right? So there is a pleasure in knowledge, for instance. That's one example. There's also a shahwa shaytaniyah, which is also spiritual in nature. But as people will get pleasure basically out of manipulating other people and sending people astray, and there are people that bad, you understand? That manipulating people is funny to them. Right? Like Iblis, like watch me start a war. That's why Rasulullah, when we were talking about this affection and everything, why did the Prophet said that the Iblis is more proud about the devil that caused a couple to separate than anything else? One devil will come and say, I made a person commit zina. One devil will say, I made a person steal. I made someone murder. I got a couple to separate. Why is he so happy? Because he loves watching, causing what? Right? Manipulation between two people that were originally loving and caring and affectionate. Now they're gone. It's gone. Haha! Look what I did. It's a sense of accomplishment for him. Look what I did. Right? I can take people who originally loved each other and were affectionate, and I can just split them apart. To him, that's awesome. You understand? That's like a real sense of accomplishment. Like, look at how good I am.
Because affection is the best.
Yes, exactly. And the opposite of it, which is hatred. You know, that's why one time, kind of as a latifa, there was one of the ulama we knew. Someone came to him and asked a question. He was just, he said, I divorced my wife out of anger. What should I do? He said, well, who divorces someone out of when they're happy? Right? Right? Like, what do you mean out of anger? As if that changes the fatwa. Like, I did it out of anger. I didn't know what it was. Well, duh. Like, how else did it happen? Like, you were just so happy with each other and in such a good mood that you said, you know what? You're gone. You know, like, that's... When does a person, like, you know, it doesn't change the fact that you divorced out of what? Out of anything else but anger? Right? So, again, yeah, it's the opposite. So, shaitan loves the manipulation. He loves to manipulate people in a way that he will start that fire. And he will start that separation between spouses, between people, between nations, right? He loves it. So that is a type of shahwa, okay? It gives him pleasure. So anything that gives you pleasure, this is a shahwa. Desires, hawa, is not shahwa. It means what you like. You understand? The things that you like. It's the lowest level of, according to Imam Ayat, it's the lowest level of love. Before you love something, initially you do what? You like it. Even with physical things. So you love a particular car. Why? In the beginning, you just liked it. You say, I really like that car. It's the hawa. Ahwi, which means literally, I like it. I really want it. If you get the chance to buy it, right, and own it, and drive it around, now that like becomes what? Love. You're attached to it, you like it, you need it, it's your hawa. So hawa, it's not your desires, it's what you like. So what is the Prophet saying then in this hadith? You're not a real believer until things that you like are correspondingly, they follow or they are in correspondence with the things that I brought, meaning what I have taught. That now your likes and dislikes are determined by what? And that's the true following of the Prophet. But the good news is that we can't reach that level because it's a very high level. Right? We should try. No one should say that they shouldn't try. Right? But if you can't reach that level, at the very least, be obedient. Okay? Meaning, this is what I'm supposed to do, I'll do that much. Just like the Bedouin. I'll do that much, not more, not less. Does it make sense? So there you go, inshallah. Any questions? And by the way, it's okay to like things, obviously. It's not. I just gave that example because it's a very simple example to understand. You like something, then you love it, right? Like whatever you want, inshallah. As long as it's not wrong, of course.